Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk to you today about the domains of business agility, which is basically the way I think about them are the organizational muscles that you need to work out to build business agility in your organization. So the reason I picked that metaphor is I do think business agility feels a lot like sports to me, right? So when you look at any kind of sports, it's really about that deliberate effort towards mastery, discipline. It's open to anyone, regardless of age, gender, sport. Similarly, when we think about business agility, I like to think about it as any company can achieve business agility. It's not something you have or don't have, but it's something that you can build more of the more you deliberately and intentionally work on it. And if you don't work on it, and even if you sort of have a certain level of, just like in the world of sports, physical fitness, if you stop practicing it, you lose it over time. So it's something you can gain and lose over time, and it depends on the intentionality of how much you work on it, how much you put into it, and so forth. And so with physical activity, you can think of the muscles, right? And if you're trying to build fitness, you start to understand, okay, these are the muscles that I need to work on. And I start to understand the relationship between these muscles and so forth. And similarly, in the world of business agility, we want to introduce you to these muscles. We believe these are the muscles, the domains of business agility are the muscles for an organization's sort of workout towards business agility. So today I'll go over these muscles, these domains quickly. And then I want to show you a really small example just to sort of bring them all together and tell you sort of how these work. So I'm going to start right at the middle here with the core muscles. And these core muscles, I like to view them as the foundational alignment elements that enable the whole part, the purpose really, that customer centricity and identity. And the reason I think this is super important is when we think about business agility, companies think about and pursue business agility for a variety of different reasons. Optimization, efficiency, et cetera, et cetera. But when I look at business agility, the journey that's worth pursuing for me is one that is built around this idea of customer centricity. That I am not pursuing business agility for these optimizations or efficiencies or gains, but I'm pursuing it because I want to be customer centric. And in that world of being customer centric, the customer is in a constant state of motion. And therefore, I as an organization need to be agile so that I can serve my customer and that I can actually maintain my customer centricity. Now, this idea of customer centricity is not just something that is rhetoric. It's not just, and I think we've all seen it. Every company sort of says, we are, customer centric, we put our customer first and so forth. But that's actually really hard. I believe it's part of their identity. It's not just a value that people say, but it needs to be every part of the core existence of the company revolves around serving that customer. And so as an example from Riot Games, when it started with this mission. We aspire to be the most player-focused game company in the world. Now, again, a lot of people may say, well, our aspirations are the same or we say the same, but it's really how you back it up. And I can tell you at Riot, since I work there, it's really day to day. We use this equation here: player greater than Riot, greater than team, greater than me, to really reorient and refocus and continuously remind us of what this is about. This is about what's good for the players. And so when we always have a trade-off, what is going to be good for the players versus what's going to be good for Riot or for a specific team, we think about it in this order. And so the reason I start with this is because this idea of customer centricity, right, is at the heart. And then we're going to build all these muscles around this idea of customer centricity. And so the enabling foundational elements for that customer centricity, meaning it's going to be really hard to be customer centric if you don't have these muscles, which are workforce, board, and partners. So let's talk about each of these sort of really quickly here. So the workforce is, how can you be customer centric if you have people that work at the organization that are not passionate about your mission, your customer? They don't care, right? They deal with the company in a transactional manner, and the company deals with them in a transactional manner. Meaning, I'll tell you what to do, you do it, you get paid, and that's it. No. With business agility to thrive, you need employees, you need workers, you need associates, whatever you want to call them, but you need people that are passionate and aligned with your mission, that care about the customer, that are empowered to do that and to manifest that care and that passion for the customer. Now, that comes hand in hand with the second muscle here, which is the board, right? Whatever governance structure you have, you may be private, public, whatever you are, right? But there is some governance and someone at the top that sort of dictates the tone of the organization and what kind of bets we are, quote unquote, making in the organization. And that board needs to be aligned also with this customer-centric aspect so that you can take these long-term bets. And sometimes these long-term bets are really hard and they don't show that result right away, but they're all in service of that customer. So if your board is not aligned with that customer centricity, it will become a misalignment that will pull the organization in the wrong direction. Third of these muscles that are about that customer centricity are your partners. Almost every organization relies on partners as part of their value stream. Now, if you really want business agility to thrive, you need to have partners that are also mission aligned and care about your customer. The reason is, if they don't, again, similar to the workforce, then you have part of your value stream that's just transactional, where the customers will feel, again, the customers, by the way, don't make a difference between, you as a company and you outsource this to another vendor, or this is part. No, they look at the whole experience as part of your brand and your company. And so if your partners aren't mission aligned, aren't passionate about your customer, then again, part of that value stream will feel non-customer centric. Now that requires a lot of work because again, partners, we have contracts with them and so forth. So find the right find the right partner. And then once you find the right partner, build a relationship with them that is non-transactional. Build a relationship with them where they can partake in that customer centricity, where they can actually innovate with you. And you have to find contractual means that actually allow you to do that. Because a lot of times, just the contract restricts the kind of relationship we have with our partners. All right, let's move forward here. So from the core really aligns around that idea of customer centricity to the remaining sort of muscle groups, leadership, individuals, and operations. And these muscle groups increase or decrease business agility, as we said, whether you work them out or not. All right, so let's start with leadership. So with leadership here, I want to start with the people management. So if you really hire the kind of people we just talked about in workforce, one of the most important roles of a leader is to recruit, hire, and nurture people that are, as we talked about, mission aligned, that are fit for future potential, that are empowered and enabled. And actually, from a leadership perspective, their role is to enable and empower them and give them the support they need to become their best selves, right? So it's really a shame if you hire amazing people like that we just talked about, but at the same time, you don't empower them and you just tell them what to do. So leadership and the leader's role is to truly unlock the potential of people. And I really believe in this, and this is so important because I do believe that people are the most agile part of any organization. It doesn't matter what systems you put, what methodology you put. If you don't have agile people, you are not agile. But if you have agile people, they can actually make everything else agile for the organization. All right. So moving along here, the one team mindset. I believe it's a really important leadership muscle to have this one team mindset where the organization doesn't feel these kingdoms and silos across the company, but they feel the leaders, especially at the top, are working as one team, moving the organization forward, having shared goals that spans functions, departments, business units, right? You ask any leader at the top, their answers align, right? That is so important for business agility because it actually harnesses the entire organization in one direction. Third of these leadership muscles is strategic agility. Strategic agility is this idea that you can articulate a strategy and define a strategy that has space, right? That is generative, that allows people at the front line, people closer to customers, right? People that understand more of what's happening, right? To identify opportunities and execute that strategy in innovative and potentially unforeseen ways, right? So things that we don't know about it. So if you have a strategy that is very pinpointing, meaning it tells people what to do, it gives them the outputs. Well, there's no space, there's no room for that. But if you have a strategy that is based on outcomes and impacts, that usually gives people sort of your next layer of workers, again, people closer to the customer, the space to figure things out. Oh, let me try this, let me experiment with this. That's strategic agility. All right, so let's talk about the operational muscles. Enterprise agility. So, enterprise agility is that muscle, right? Where if you really think about HR, legal, finance, any other operational governance entities or frameworks within the organization, they are all oriented to enable the organization, not stifle it. Now, I know usually that is the intention of these organizations is to enable, but a lot of times the way governance is articulated and policies are put in place, they end up stifling the organization. They end up becoming a barrier. They end up actually having the frontline and the product organization think twice before, you know what, here's an opportunity. I want to ask for more money, or I want to do this, or I want to switch this. It's like, oh my God, the process that I have to go through is so painful and costly that I don't want to do it. Enterprise agility really emphasizes this notion that the entire enterprise, especially the back office, is aligned and geared to enable that agility and that customer centricity rather than hinder it. Process agility. Process agility is something I think a lot of us are familiar with when we talk about agile in general. This is the adaptation and continuous improvement and evolution of our operations and how we work in service of creating better value and faster value to our customers. So that's process agility. But it also connects to operations because, for example, if I want dynamic funding or anything like that, I need process agility, I need enterprise agility, both of those together. Hand in hand, one thing that we talk a lot about is structural agility, right? That's a really important muscle also. And structural agility is that ability of the organization to not only change its structure and adapt its structure as needed, but also to create coalitions across the organization when there's an emergent opportunity. And I say this because sometimes it's not about changing my structure for every small opportunity, but how do you create these virtual teams across the organization quickly and disband them quickly also when an emergent opportunity shows up or when I have a project or a crisis that I need to work on, right? But also hand in hand with that is building that capability of change management so that change doesn't become this huge waterfall thing that we have to do and it takes, hiring managing consulting companies and doing this and doing that because it happens every 3 to 5 years and it's such a big thing. Structural agility is really building that capability, setting expectations within the organization that guess what? We're in a continuous state of sort of seismic motion, right? Of structural changes, small, sometimes bigger, sometimes, but change is part of how we work here. right? And the reason that's really important is if you have that strategic agility we talked about, then as you shift your strategy, sometimes you need to be able to have your structure be in service of that strategy. But a lot of times we have structures that are obsolete for the organization's strategy and the direction where it's going, but we keep it because guess what? It's so expensive to change structure, and so we create these, duct tape solutions and whatnot. All right. So our third muscle group are individuals. And with individuals, I want to start talking first about this notion of ownership and accountability. Ownership and accountability really, again, goes hand in hand with some of the things we talked about earlier, but it's that deep sense of ownership that individuals have that are closest to the customer to actually make decisions and innovate, right? And they need to feel that sense of ownership. They need to feel that sense of accountability so that they can actually feel that, passion and suggest ideas and do things and take that initiative. Those things usually are really, really hard in organizations. Why? Because of the amount of process and because of the mindset of individuals. So those go hand in hand. I want to jump to talk about this craft excellence for a second. So, craft excellence really is this idea that we really need to be good at what we do, right? So, all this agility is great, but if we're not good at our core craft, then sort of we can't execute anything. So this craft excellent is about thriving, continuously improving over time, but also recognizing and acknowledging that not all crafts we need to excel in, right? The reason is because there are certain crafts that create this competitive advantage and are most crucial to our organization and to winning with our customers. That's the ones you want to invest in the most. And then three, really this craft excellence around enabling individuals to take advantage of emerging opportunities. I'm going to actually talk about that I'm going to talk about that in a bit in more detail. All right. So the last one here is growth mindset. So growth mindset here is the idea that individuals in our organization learn by doing. They're continuously experimenting, trying, developing. They're comfortable working in ambiguous situations and dynamic situations. And most importantly, they're not afraid of failure or to speak up or to try new things, right? That's really, really important because if you think about everything we just talked about in this muscle group, to have that ownership mentality, to experiment and try and increase my craft and to try new things, that all really stems from this growth mindset. So all three of these are really, really important to build in individuals so that we can build that core muscle group of agile people within our organization. All right. So business agility, as a definition here by the Business Agility Institute, is a set of organizational capabilities, behaviors, and ways of working that afford your business the freedom, flexibility, and resilience to achieve its purpose no matter what the future brings. So the part I really want to focus on here is this notion of organizational capabilities, right? And the capabilities here, these are examples, right? The capability to cultivate a culture of learning and experimentation, the capability or the ability to seize emerging opportunities, the ability to adaptively and dynamically fund, the ability to lead through empowerment and influence. And so really here, when we look at this definition, business agility are these capabilities. But these capabilities are not just random capabilities. These capabilities afford the business these three things: freedom, flexibility, and resilience, right? And so I want to show you how these organizational muscles, these domains of business agility that we talked about, help create these capabilities, right? And it's sort of like, you have muscles that work out, but when they work out together, they enable you to do something. And so for that, I want to tell you a quick story from Riot Games. And this story is actually going to demonstrate these capabilities, these four capabilities, and show you sort of the muscle groups behind them. So the story, really, really briefly, you can look it up online. I've talked about it before, but it's the story of KDA pop stars in 2018. So in 2018, Riot Games is holding their world championships in Seoul, Korea. And 8 months or so before the World Championships, and again, think of the World Championships, if you've never seen them, as the World Cup, right, or the Olympics, right? And so you have this massive arena, 50,000 players watching, and you have this grand performance. And so we're thinking, what are we going to do for the opening ceremony? And someone had this idea. What if we create a virtual band from champions within our game, and that band comes on stage in augmented reality, they perform a hit single, and simultaneously we release a music video and that hit single across the world. We're like, that is going to be awesome. Again, going back to the point of customer centricity, right? We're not trying to be agile intentionally just to be agile. No, all we're trying to do is surprise and delight and make it awesome for our customers, for our players. And in that journey, we need to be agile, right? And so what we were thinking about is, how can we surprise and delight our customers? That was the idea. But wow, we need to have these capabilities, right, in order to pull this off. Especially, and I think this is really, really important, this is not on our roadmap. We don't have budget for it. We haven't planned for this. And the opening ceremony is 8 months away or something. So how did we do this? All right. So I go into details about the story, but here I just want to show you these capabilities and the muscles that came together to really make this possible. All right. So the first capability, the ability to cultivate a culture of learning and experimentation. So if you start to see here, the muscle groups that we talked about earlier, these are all the different muscle groups that come together for us to realize this capability of cultivating a culture of learning and experimentation. So first, we have to hire people that are passionate about what we're doing, right? That's the workforce, right? And at Riot, we hire gamers. Why do we hire gamers? Because gamers are passionate about serving other gamers. Now, is that all we hire? No, but this is a really core element of what we look for. People that are passionate about gaming and gamers. Second here, I want you to look at the leadership muscles. People management and strategic agility, right? So again, you hire that workforce that we just talked about, but you have great leadership that through management really empowers these people and unlocks their full potential, right? And so the idea of KDA actually came from a music producer, right? He was the one that said, hey, what if we do this idea? It didn't come from some leader at the top that said, we need to do this and let's make it happen. No, it really came from bottoms up. And the reason that worked is because, again, one of the other things, strategic agility. So we had a strategy that was really clear on where we wanted to go, but it had tons of generative space for people to say, okay, how can we achieve these outcomes? I don't know, but let's brainstorm and let's figure it out. So it had space for people to create ideas. Now, let's go back to the people element of this, the individuals, which is craft excellence, ownership, and growth mindset. And I want to tell you a little bit about how especially that craft excellence came about, because I think that's really going to cement what we mean by this culture of learning and experimentation, and how these muscles of craft excellence, ownership and accountability, and growth mindset come together. So let me show you here. So any game has music, and if you played a game without music, it's really bad, actually. So our game, like any other game, had music. But again, practicing that ownership and accountability mindset, we had someone who many years back said, hey guys, wouldn't it be cool to make a music video, right? Take the music to the next level, create a music video. We're like, but we don't have the craft to do that. But you know what? Growth mindset kicking in here. Let's learn. We're open to learning and experimenting and trying things out. So we learn how to make a music video, and we make a music video, and it turns out to be a huge hit. So a couple of years later, someone else comes and says, hey guys, What if we make a music album? Okay, well, we don't have the craft. Again, growth mindset. Let's build this. So the craft excellence, because now we know how to make music videos, it's one step easier to actually make a music album. So we figure out how to make a music album. We learn from that a ton. We make mistakes. Again, growth mindset kicking in here, right? And then we move to the next thing and say, wait a minute. We have these great world-class performances on stage for our world finals. What if we start bringing world-class artists like Imagine Dragons and others on stage for performances? Can we do that? We learn a ton. Again, growth mindset, ownership, people are coming up with ideas. All of these are happening not intentionally as part of a roadmap of what to build and what not to build, but actually just from that idea of we want to experiment and learn and surprise and delight our customers. That's the main motive that's driving all this here. And from that, we build certain capabilities and crafts. All that had to come in place for us to say that we could do something like KDA in the time frame we had. So if we had all the business agility aspects that we talked about earlier, but we didn't have that craft excellence, and all we had was the experience of music in a game, we couldn't pull off something like KDA. Why? We just didn't have the craft to do so. And so investing in craft all the time to experiment and learn, that comes, again, from that ownership mindset of trying things out, but also from that growth mindset of not being afraid to fail. So again here, so all these things had to come together to build that culture of learning and experimentation. All right, moving on to the next capability, the ability to seize emergent opportunities. Again, look at the different muscle groups that we had to flex here, right? So strategic agility, we talked about that, right? So if our strategy was too narrow, right, and wasn't generative, people wouldn't have come up with these ideas, and we couldn't have pivoted to actually make that happen. One team is really, really important here because when an emergent opportunity comes, it requires the entire organization to sort of rally around that, right? But if leaders are busy with their goals and, we don't see the big picture and we don't feel like one team, then these kind of emergent opportunities that require shifts of people and resources and other things just won't happen. Why? Because everyone is focused on themselves, not on the customer or the opportunity that's here that to be seized. The craft excellence, we just talked about that a minute ago, but also structural agility. So structural agility is something we talked about earlier, but the ability to be able to form these coalitions, right? And bring people together. So with KDA, for example, it was called the Coalition of the Unwilling. The reason it was called the Coalition of the Unwilling is that muscle of structural agility was one of the weakest muscles we had at Riot. So since then, we've worked on it a lot to make it stronger. But we realized that when this emergent opportunity came about, that was the most painful muscle to flex. Why? Because we just couldn't bring together different people from the organization to seize this opportunity. That was a big part of the pain. The thing I want to focus on also is the partners. We couldn't have made KDA a reality without our partners. Now, to turn around an animated, a music video and create augmented reality and all that, it wasn't something that we had the full bandwidth to do ourselves. But having partners, now, we didn't go out and look for partners right at that moment. We had partners that we had built long-term relationships with, and we had contractual mechanisms and trust and relationships with them that allowed them to innovate with us and think with us, not just, hey, boss, tell me what to do and I'm going to go do it. So they were part of that co-creation process to really build something that surprised our customers and our players. The next ability here is to adaptively and dynamically fund. So as I talked to you before, this was not something that was budgeted for. It was not on our roadmap. It was an idea that came up. And so it required so many contracts, I think like 26 contracts or something, to be signed in a matter of weeks. It required funding to make this happen. So we needed that enterprise agility, that process agility. And it was fascinating within Riot because instead of like in other organizations where I've seen like the product team is like, okay, how are we going to talk to finance and make it happen. And what do we do? What's the workaround? Working? No, finance was the ones like, you guys just focus on that. We'll figure out how to get the money for this and do that. It's that partnership. Legal was amazing. They're like, yes, this is going to be great for our players. We'll figure out how to make it happen contractually, right? So that also requires that one team mindset and the board alignment to make all this happen. The ability to lead through empowerment and influence. This is really sort of the entire story of KDA, right? And we have a workforce that is really passionate about the mission. We have people management that, unlocks these people and allows them to come up with ideas and try new things. But we have individuals, rioters, that feel that sense of ownership and accountability. And all this works together to build that capability of leading through empowerment and influence. This was both a bottom up and top down initiative. So once the idea became a reality, it had to have alignment at the top. So leadership, right, to make it a reality across the organization so that we could pull off something like KDA. So that bottom up, top down leading, but through empowerment and influence, is a critical capability for business agility. And these are some of the muscles that we need to work out to realize that. All right, so just to wrap it up here, we talked about the domains of business agility and how these are really the core muscle groups, but these muscle groups are not in isolation. You work these muscles together to build certain capabilities. These are the capabilities, right, that afford your business the freedom, flexibility, and resilience to achieve your purpose, no matter what the future brings. What capabilities do you need to focus on? That's something for you to figure out. What are those capabilities that will afford you the freedom, flexibility, and resilience to achieve your purpose? Not all companies need to have the exact same capabilities, but we all need to build these capabilities, these business agility capabilities, so that we can be ready to serve and delight and surprise our customers no matter what the future brings. I hope this summarizes what the domains of business agility are and how you can use them for your organization.